Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, it's been a surprisingly eventful week for Diablo 4 considering we are a month into Season 1. Earlier in the week we had the announcement of Season 2 already, and just last night we had the patch notes drop for patch 1.1.3, which will be hitting Diablo 4 next week. So we're going to break down those patch notes, talk about anything new that we've learned about Season 2 in the last few days, and also cover anything else of note that's happening in the community really. Starting off then, there was actually a hotfix that hit a couple of nights ago to the game, stealthily entering the game, and the main reason that it was able to achieve this stealth is, well, it didn't do much of anything. In fact, quite specifically, it only released with one note about its content, and come on, you can guess it, you know what it is, miscellaneous further stability improvements. It's become a joke how often we see this line. It's vague, it's common, and as much as I poke at it, it is important though, because this means they are constantly working on performance and stability for the game. Changes happen in every patch, and that is at least showing an attempt being made here, I suppose. Outside of this then, we have the early reveal of the patch notes for 1.1.3, which is going to hit the game next week, theoretically likely on Tuesday at the normal patch time. As far as what this patch actually contains then, let's be real, it matters. It's a positive change. It's something that at least the vast majority of players think should change, and the way that it is changing too, so that's a good start. It's not a meaningless change either. It will affect gameplay, and people will appreciate it. And there's no nerfs in the patch either, so all of that is good. It's really good, right? But as for the actual contents then, the update's main feature is changes to enemy crowd control potency, including various elite affixes and specific mob stun attacks as well, and all of this is genuinely lovely. They're making it a lot easier to just sort of exist in the world. They're making it a lot harder to be chain CC'd. Honestly, I think the main thing that they need to introduce is diminishing returns for crowd control against players. That would make a world of difference, but obviously that's a lot harder of a thing to do, and just change the way that the systems the game already has work. It doesn't fix what ails the game completely, it doesn't make it suddenly perfect, but it is a positive change to have for sure. As for how big of a positive it is though, we'll have to see how big the difference actually is in action when the patch comes out, because it's really just hard to gauge the feel of a change like this purely from text, especially when that text has no actual numbers to represent the changes either. That said, while that is by far the beef of this patch, there are a few other things as well, such as changes to the fire enchanted elites to make that affix less annoying, which is absolutely appreciated, and also a reduction in the damage of the bloated corpse fiend charge attack. Then we have an interesting change too, which will actually be good for the game as well, which is a change of the way that affixes sort on items. By this, it means the order that they are displayed on an item. For example, something like crit chance might have high priority to be slot 1, so every item with crit chance will now have crit chance in the first affix slot when you're reading through the actual things on it. That way you can easily compare items, see different ones, see which ones are better. It's just a nice little bit of quality of life. Not a massive thing by any means, but as they say, it lays foundation for them to mess with things in the future a bit easier. The seasonal and class filters on the codex being updated are neat as well. Not overly important at all, but it is a positive change. And then achievements and such sharing across cross-platform is nice for anyone who does play cross-platform. After that, it just goes into a bunch of bug fixes which generally are not a big deal, with a few exceptions. One of these notes mentions that there is a bug with the Echo of Arshan that makes it not guaranteed drop a legendary after level 35, and that is being fixed. And the big deal with that, of course, is in theory it means that in patch 1.1.3, the World Tier 4 version of Arshan should actually guaranteed drop 800 item power legendary every time you kill it now, because it always drops item power 800 items, and now it'll drop a guaranteed legendary too, which is actually quite a hefty drop, especially if you get it on one of the legendaries that scales with item power too instead of just percentages, so I'm actually a pretty big fan of this. After that, they just fixed some multiplayer issues, quite specifically the way that certain damage effects would not overlap with multiple players. More than anything, this affected world bosses and open world events, but if you've ever done group content with more than one of the same class, you probably noticed that if one of you activates one of these effects, it wouldn't count for anyone else. Now, however, that's been fixed. It now affects all the players that are using them. It's just a nice change for that specific situation of group content that makes the game actually understand that different people can apply different things. Then we have a bunch of more sort of miscellaneous changes once again, including the wonderfully insightful patch note, Ghost horses? No, okay, I really like that one, okay? And of course, everyone's favorite, various performance and stability improvements across all platforms. Chef's kiss. That's a great way to change that line while it's still being the same line. It's a smaller patch for sure, as far as the effect on the entire player base at least, but it's definitely a positive patch all around, so it's hard to be mad about this. That said, even with that, most people seem to be paying more attention towards Season 2 than Season 1 now, and even then, a lot of people are rightfully incredibly skeptical about Season 2, which we should be, until we we see it properly, until we see actual genuine gameplay, until we see the details of all the things that they've promised. We had the announcement for this season earlier this week, and since that reveal trailer came out, there have been 2 interviews done with Rod Ferguson, the GM of the Diablo franchise, and I figured it would be a good idea to go over any relevant things that came up in these, of course. For the most part though, this first live interview at Gamescom on the stage didn't give us much extra information, aside from that the player in Season 2 is basically going to become a vampire as well, which is where our vampiric powers are going to be coming from. Essentially, there's going to be a big bad vampire lord enemy, as Rod confirms here. He is sending in a horde of vampires, you get turned, but you fight back. You're a vampire fighting against vampires. It's very Blade-esque. And then the major endpoint objective of the season is fighting and defeating the vampire lord of it all. Not much new here, but a slight bit of extra context for the theme in the story of the season. Then we also had an interview actually done by Wowhead with Rod at Gamescom as well, and they asked some pretty solid questions too, and got reasonable enough responses to them. The first question was about Season 1, essentially just what did you learn, what will you change? The response to this from Rod is that future seasons will be a bit more proactive. The big deal with Season 1 is that it was pretty much completely developed before the base game even launched, with no player feedback to draw off of at all, whereas future seasons will always have that because they're being developed with the game live. So that isn't really anything new to us as far as information goes though, but there is at least an acknowledgement of what happened and what needs to change and what needs to have more attention for seasons to work better in the future. There is also a question about the barber heart and if it is in line for nerfs, and Rod says, actually we think this is a fun and powerful chase item. Changes to it could happen but are unlikely to because it is completely contained within Season 1 itself, so they don't really see a problem with letting it just be what it is. They're happy to just let it be its own broken strong thing for the rest of the season. Then we have a really solid question. Before launch of Diablo 4, there was mention that seasons in Diablo 4 would actually come with more Paragon boards for every class to add to all the choices that we have and help create more interesting builds and add more endgame content with every season. Rod acknowledged that they did say this before launch, but it has since been left aside and there are no plans for this currently, but it could always come back in the future because it's an easy thing to just put in. I think this would definitely be an interesting way to flesh out the content of seasons and especially make the later parts of them more interesting. Maybe even doing something like one unique Paragon board for each class that can only be used in that season. It has a bunch of uniquely strong nodes or something like that. Could be fun, sort of push people in certain directions each season, let them play around it and see what they can actually make the most of. And that's pretty much it for that interview then. There's a bit of other Q&A, but those are the actual important bits for sure. Then we just have a couple of developer tweets. Here we have someone tweeting Rod and asking if there will be a campfire chat at some point soon to talk about Season 2 now that it's been revealed, more specifically the changes that the developers brought up to vulnerable, crit, overpower, and other equipment affixes that are overly strong currently, specifically looking to hear what they are planning far enough in advance that if players disagree with it, there will still be time to change it, and I think that's probably a good way to go about it this time. Rod's response to all of that is yes, there will be a campfire chat about Season 2, but you're going to have to wait a while as it's going to happen at the beginning of October. So essentially you have to wait as long for that campfire chat to happen as the amount of time that Season 1 has been going on so far, but it is confirmed. Then lastly we have a Reddit post saying Uberlilith is stupid and they want to see a developer complete it because no one believes any of the devs have. There is a common sentiment in the community that the developers just don't really play the game, and don't get me wrong, the vast majority of the time it does sort of feel like that's the case, at least with the people that are front-facing, forward-facing community interacting, but having seen this post, I just felt the need to respond with this tweet. This is Adam Jackson, the lead class designer for Diablo 4. This is the guy who was on the last developer stream really just kicking ass and sounded like he knew exactly all the inner workings of the game, which was lovely, and he did in fact beat Uberlilith, not even in Season 1 with Malignant Heart powers, so hey, at least some of the developers do play the game, and to a reasonably high level as well, so we at least get this confirmation here too. And that's just about it for today everyone, just a little roundup and breakdown of the last couple of days of news in the world of Diablo 4. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the various goings on. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.